Good evening. Welcome to the January 17th, 2024 Finance Board meeting. Called the meeting to order at 5:10 p.m. Tonight on the agenda, the primary topics are to start our annual budget meetings with the various town departments to get their input on what they're making their requests for, and so that we are understanding the different ins and outs of their departments and what they're looking for the next fiscal year. The first meeting tonight will be with Beth Cuniff, who is the town clerk. Hi, Beth.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. I guess, do you want me to go through some of the changes in the budget as far as?
Our board
your
is the same
process?
as last year, so you're familiar with everybody. Maybe if you could just give us a brief update on kind of what's been going on in your office in terms of any new, maybe regulations that are impacting your work, and then kind of go through what your request is for the current year.
Okay, all right. So the Votes Act of 2022 changed the mail-in voting permanently. It was a temporary change during COVID, and now it's a permanent change. So there will be vote by mail for all state elections and early in-person voting for all state elections. It is optional for the towns to either choose to opt in or opt out on both of those. The elections system is changing their software, so we got new computers this week, and they originally were supposed to have the software available by last October. It didn't work, so they're hesitant on transferring all the information over prior to a major election, so they're now going to wait until after the March primary, and then they're going to hopefully transfer all the software over, and there'll be no glitches. But that could be during it will be during our local election, so hopefully all will go well. Vital Statistics is also changing their entire software. They've started with the death certificates or death notices, and the biggest change is actually to the nurses and the doctors who fill out the documentation. So that's where the biggest area of change has been, but that affects how we complete information. They will continue on with birth next, and then with marriages. As far as our highlights of the year, I thank you very much for having the wonderful assistant, Julie Fabry, because between the two of us, we have got a lot of organization done and cleanup and ready to follow through in the process of digitizing some of our records to make them more easily accessible to us and to others who look on the website. When public records requests come in, or even just in any day-to-day looking up for information for past town reports, it's a great option to be able to type in some of what you're looking for and have a pop-up so that you can take a look at and read through and determine what Mass General laws were passed, when an item went through town meeting or even town elections. So in order to get to the process of digitization, we had to kind of organize everything we had. We've kind of done a lot of that, and now we're ready to go to the next step. So I did put in an application through CPC this year to ask for funds to digitize. We're going to start with the town reports. So if I start slowly, maybe we can afford to do a little bit each year and then get it accomplished. One of the other things that we're going to do this year is we've still had a real lack of registration of dogs in the town. So this year we've combined with West Newbury and Merrimack, and we are going to run a mock election in the elementary schools. And the children will vote on the shape of the tag and the color of the tag. And then we will announce the voting results at the town meeting, so hopefully parents will come and be interested in the results. And just to get it talked about more in the families and in the homes, and just to understand the importance of registering your dog. So that's our little incentive between the three towns. Credit goes to West Newbury. The assistant clerk there came up with the idea, and he's organizing it. So I guess highlights for the year for us that the clerk's office took in about almost $12,000. We had about 430 vital records requests, 239 in person, 191 online. We had about 87 public records requests, 639 dog licenses, 551 were in person, and 88 were online. We had 31 business certificates, either new or updated, and 22 marriage intentions. I mentioned kind of what our goals were moving forward, but a lot of ours are election-related for 2024. Since we will have the 4 elections, it will be a very busy year. Finance-wise, that runs over 2 fiscal years, so 2 of the elections will fall with the one we already had for, well, there would be 3 elections for 2025, moving forward. So 3 for the past, 3 for the forward. Public records requests will absolutely increase this year because of the elections. It's very common for campaigns to request on a regular basis what the numbers are, who's already voted, who's asked for ballots by mail, how many have been returned. So it's a constant weekly, so that also increases during a heavy election year. So I am very thankful for Julie to be in the office, and we've kind of coordinated the hours. Last year, we got the option. She bumped up to 15 hours. She does 12 hours on a regular basis, which gives us extra hours to work with when the office is busier, and that's how we're handling it. And it's working out very well so far. So I guess I can... Taking a look at the budget itself, the town clerk's salary is no change. The town administrator and the town accountant graciously offered to move the clerk's salary over to the assistant salary for that extra $2,000 that I had asked to move this year. So we'll move next year as part of the budget, so it won't be as controversial. The poll worker's salary has gone up quite a bit, and that has everything to do with the number of elections and the number of in-person early voting that has to take place. Preparation to get ballots mailed out, and we have to have 2 weeks of early in-person for presidential and 1 week for the state, and we have optional dates for the local. Office expenses have gone up minimally. Education expenses went up minimally, and then election expenses also go up because it's also related to elections. In order for me to order ballots, in order for me to pay for the software cards that we receive for each election, we pay for those. So more elections increases the costs. I did not include in my budget the request for an additional tabulator. Back up. I did request a poll pad. Poll pads we use to check in voters. Rebecca was able to find money in the budget so that we could purchase a poll pad for this year. So we will have 2 poll pads per precinct for people to check in. We currently have 3 tabulators. We have 1 spare and 1 for each precinct. It is strongly recommended that we have a backup for each precinct. Because of the vote by mail, people complete their ballots at home. They use multiple color inks. They get stains on the ballots. The machines were not designed to read all that extra. And the towns are finding that the machines are failing on a regular basis in the midst of an election. So to prevent us from having to hand count because the machine goes down and we don't have another backup, it is recommended that we purchase another one, which comes with a price tag annually of a $250 maintenance. So they increased the charge from $200 to $250 per year. So I did not include the tabulator in my budget, but I am requesting it. So I don't know if there's another way to pay for that outside of the clerk's budget, I guess.
Okay, so the tabulator would cost $250 per year, but then you have the initial
Cost
Oh,
of. So
cost.
I did include they gave me, whoops, right here. They gave me an estimate for the cost of the tabulator, which is $6,350. They originally told me if I ordered it this year, they could break the cost down between 2 years to pay half and half, but we missed that opportunity, so it would be the full cost if we order it in '25.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. questions?
May I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Yep.
Do you think that they would honor that agreement if you came back and stated that we might be able to work out an agreement for the 2 fiscal years, or is it completely off the table?
I don't think anything's off the table. So yes, I could go back and ask them if they could divide up the cost between 25 and 26. Right,
Okay.
that's your,
If we could, that would be helpful. I think I might be able to move forward with that from the technology budget if things go accordingly.
okay. I will ask and let you know. Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
The assistant town clerk, how many hours a week?
She's 15.
15?
She's 15 per week, but what we worked out is that she works 12 hours per week, and that gives us flex hours throughout the year. So the budget is based on a 15-hour week.
The flex hours gives you flexibility during elections.
Elections, correct. Or even right now, because it's census and dog time, so it's been a little bit crazy. Plus, we were preparing for the election next week, so it works out well. And works out well for her, too. She's very happy with the schedule.
It seems like the mandates set by non-town governments is putting a burden on the town clerks to expend many hours in dollars. So, except like we have an extra election because of this school thing, right?
I will.
That's for this year,
But I will just correct you to say that because of the design of the Whittier election, the way the legal mandates, Whittier is picking up the cost. I have to pay it in advance, but Whittier will reimburse us for all costs that I have to submit them, the paperwork. So that will not be an election that will cost us anything additional for fiscal '24.
of course, the hours for that are 11 to 7.
That's correct. That's also mandated by the law.
My daughter can't go because she works.
Absentee is still available for those who cannot. The way the law, it doesn't fall under the new 2020 election laws, so therefore, it doesn't offer vote by mail or early in person. But absentee is always an option. I know she's running out of time at this point, but if she could stop into the office, she could absentee vote in person at the desk.
Did you, I was at the Board of Selectmen meeting last night, and did you mention something about the state looking to do some election expenses, but still you would have to budget for them ahead of time?
Yes.
And then get the reimbursement later?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct. Because for me to have people work and not have that in my budget is, I believe, that's violation. So the state has offered to, because it's a unfunded mandate, I can apply for reimbursement for the unfunded portion, which is the vote by mail and the early in person. So they don't cover anything on your election day, with the exception of the original unfunded mandate of 2 hours in the morning. They still cover that. I have to apply for that money each year as well, for any time there's a state election. We got an email the other day from the Attorney General's office that they are thinking that they will, because local elections are also mandated to have vote by mail and early in person, that they're looking into potential reimbursement for that as well. But that's not confirmed. So when they do send me out the information, I will fill in whichever elections they offer with the man hours, with materials, and that's what it is, mostly man hours and material. So
But obviously, conservative-wise, you need to have it in your budget,
I do.
and then,
And then it comes back to the town, and I believe it goes back to the general fund. I know we transferred last year from the general fund back to mine to cover the cost of elections, but I believe, you can double-check with the accountant, that it goes to the general fund when it gets returned to us.
Is this the Whittier reimbursement?
No, this is the
The
regular
state.
state, the state reimbursement for unfunded mandates. Last year it was small because it was only no, last year was decent.
Not last year.
Correct, for the cost of mailing, for,
We did open a special revenue fund for that.
so
when you expend the money that you know you're going to be applying for reimbursement for, you should put it to the special revenue fund and keep it out of the general fund.
Okay. So does that affect how I write up the budget in the system?
Yes, you wouldn't include that as part of your election expenses in your general fund. And you don't have to write a budget for your special revenue fund.
But we did. It's all in here.
Right, it's all in here. But, so how do I legally have
As
people
long
work
as
if
it's
it's not?
one-to-one, it's, you would just take it out. So if they're granting you up to, say, $2,000, then you would put $2,000 worth of election expenses into the special revenue fund when you spend them, then fill out your paperwork to the state for the reimbursement, and then it will, when we get that revenue, that will also go to the special revenue fund, so it zeroes out. Because remember, we moved it last year, because I looked up how we were supposed to account for it.
Right,
They
but the
don't want it in
lines
the
aren't
general
that
fund.
clean as to trying to figure out exactly how much you're gonna spend in advance for man-hours and supplies.
Well, you would
Well, I
only
have-
have to book it there as you incur it. So whatever the grant documents say is allowable,
It's not a grant.
or the state mandate, or, whatever law they put together. We can look through it after this, if
Okay.
you want to look at it tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds good. So that may change some of the figures here or the percentages here, if I have to move some of this money back over to that
good.
fund, excuse me, or that account, I should say.
Then I just want to make a comment about the narrative here talks about us not, let me say, appreciating or supporting is the tone, the election staff, and I just want to make it clear to the town, the clerk, the residents, the election staff, that we absolutely value and appreciate the election staff. I've worked many, many elections myself and have always really enjoyed that process. The issue is a matter of fiscal responsibility and budgeting and challenges across the entire organization. And I'm sorry if any of that has been interpreted differently, but that is my feeling, is that we absolutely appreciate the staff, and I've always really enjoyed working the elections and working with the election staff. But, the backup tabulators, you refer to a lack of respect and lack of understanding for what they do, and I just don't think that that exists. I think that I personally, 100% understand and appreciate what they do, because I've done it with them, and I thank them for it.
And I guess I would say it would be nice to compensate them with at least minimum wage for what they do. It's long hours. I understand how difficult it is for the town. I know all the expenses that we're looking at, but we are probably one of the only communities that don't at least pay minimum wage to our election workers. And I'm hoping that at some point in time, we will
No one should
respect them
work
enough
less.
to,
Everyone should get minimum wages.
agreed.
What is it, because they're old?
No, because
No,
it
it's
falls
because they're
under
not a
different Mass
full-time
General law.
staff member, and we have other full-time
Well,
staff
people that
members.
work in the library get minimum wage. Okay? So I don't get that point, so that's a sticking point with me.
Last year, Melissa did have the Mass General law at her fingertips there, that it falls under, that they are not required, that the town is not required to pay minimum. But
Well,
as a
that's true.
respect for what they do, for the time they put in, for courtesy, I'm hoping that in the future, you will be able to at least offer minimum wage. So, not to misunderstand my representation there, but I do think it's a matter of respect.
It was 0 when I first was an election worker, which wasn't all that long ago. It was all completely volunteer work. So we have made some progress in that direction, and we will continue to.
As a finance board member, you would not be allowed, you're not supposed to take money for working the election.
But nobody got paid as election workers years ago. And you know.
I've
and
got a
it's-
lot of records going back in my office, and there's a lot of money that was paid out to election workers.
I wasn't paid the first years that I was an election worker. I can
Right.
say that unequivocally. And I can also say that as far as, you know, well,
Okay. I do have years' worth of records, so if you
Okay.
want to see.
I can just speak for myself.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Bill, Alex, do you have any questions? No? You guys are all set as well?
I'm all set.
Thank you, Beth, very much.
Thank you for your time. And I will let you know about the LHS.
Rebecca, do you want to grab Julie? So the next budget meeting that we're going to have is with the Board of Assessors. She just asked if she could move up her time. And the police chief and fire chief agreed to allow her to come in. Hello. Hi, Julie.
Hello.
That's okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
I think you are familiar with everybody on the board.
I don't know if we've ever met.
Last
Oh, you were here last year? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then yes, then we have all met.
Great. So I guess if you could just take a few minutes, just give a quick overview of the department, what you have accomplished the past year, what your goals are, and then
Okay.
quickly you can go through your budget.
Okay, so, nothing really changes in the assessing world. So, we're still the department that records, analyzes all the information about all the properties here in town. We have to classify them, make sure that everybody is equal in their fair share of paying taxes. We also handle abatements, exemptions, any appeals that might come in from abatement exemption applications. And we also set the tax rate in our office. Oh, we help in the process in setting the tax rate, I should say. Let's see. We also, I do deal a lot with the general public. I love and enjoy them. They come in daily, and we have chats, and people have a lot of questions, especially this year with the increases in values that they've seen, especially the older community. They're concerned about, you know, the rise in values, and it's sometimes hard to comprehend with the prices that are being paid for real estate these days, and that, you know, and that's what drives our values in town. So when people are spending over $1 million on a property, it drives the rest of the property values up, and we've had our fair share of over $1 million sales this year. This is my 4th year, and I think this is the first time that I've had multiple million plus sales in town. So it's good, and it's hard, you know, for people to understand, but that is what drives the value. So sometimes people just need a little bit of education on how values are driven. It's hard to think when, you know, 60 years ago you spent $25 on your home, and now it's worth $750,000. So that's, you know, it's a lot of explanation, I think. But I do that daily with people. Help them find information that they may be looking for. Registry of Deeds website. I have people come in looking for plot plans and boundary lines and stuff like that. So it's a lot of referrals as to how they can get that information. Assistance. A lot of people aren't familiar with the computers or the programs that they use, so they come to me for help with that. And that's my favorite part of the job. I love helping the people. We have, what else this year has gone on? The tax rate was set earlier than last year, which was exciting for all of us. I think we're in a little bit of a rhythm that we've gotten into the past few years, working as a team. We all kind of came in at the same time, so we were a little bit, but I think we're in the groove now as far as how it works and what we all need to do and our timelines and getting stuff in. So that went relatively smooth, so I was happy about that. And for goals this year, I am actually going to be continuing my education as far as accreditation, hoping to get, it's hard for me to take classes. Usually the classes are a week or two long, so that would take me out of the office, and because I'm the only person in the department, it's kind of hard to manage that. So they do have some winter online classes that I'm going to be taking this year to complete another course working towards my accreditation. And another priority goal is to fill our open seats. I've never had a full board since I've been here, so that's been difficult. I don't have any, one to advise sometimes, and so I know that the two gentlemen that are with us still are hanging on by a thread. We begged them to come back, and they bolted willingly, so they're, until we can get those seats filled, I think they're going to hang on there with us. But we finally filled the third seat this year, but unfortunately, she had to resign relatively fast for, her own personal stuff, but.
So who's on the board now?
So it's still Bill Dark, and I'm drawing a blank.
It's okay, it'll come back.
Done. Dana Moody, sorry. I know. That's okay, I should know that. That's a simple question. So hopefully, we did change the bylaws for that, so now it doesn't have to be an elected position. It can be an appointed position, but we also have to have interest in order to appoint somebody. So we're working on that. I still think there's a little bit of conflict with if the person has to be a resident of the town or not, and I'm not sure where, they don't have to be a resident. So that opens up the door.
The appointment takes away the residency requirement.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that, but that actually opens up the door for people that I know in the assessing world that have interest in coming in and just getting experience in other communities or, helping out for their.
Is your mic not on?
Sorry,
What?
my mic was
Oh.
off.
So I'm hoping with that, it'll open up the door to more, more interest, and we'll be able to fill that, and it's helpful to have, a full board, naturally. And that's about it.
All right, do you want to take us through your?
The budget's pretty
straightforward.
straightforward. Yep, I think that we have salary, we did our standard 2%. The stipends are still there, and we're going to I will have an extra, because that's for the 3 individuals, so I will have an extra, but I want to keep it in next year's budget in case we have, someone come in and fill the seat. Expenses is staying the same. Our personal property appraisals that I had on my budget for 3 years, and they kept saying, oh, we're going to need them next year. And so finally this year we did use that, and it was, it actually worked out great because once we had those personal property accounts appraised, we did pick up a bunch of new growth. That was great. And now the Department of Revenue is that's going to be a mandated thing moving forward. We are going to have to submit appraisals done outside for those accounts. So that is specifically for that.
So that's going to be, so before that was a one-time thing?
It was-
And then it was carried forward because they didn't do it? And
Right.
now it's
It's-
expected to be an annual thing?
Correct,
so
yes, it
that's-
was supposed to start as an annual thing. It was a new thing that they started. And so it was supposed to be annual, and because of the pandemic, they ran into issues and they kind of just, swept it up.
Paused it.
Yes, for now, but then now they think everything's back in order with them, so they started this up, and this is going to be a new thing moving forward that's going to have to be done annually. And then our reval maintenance account has gone up, and I'm pretty sure I included the contract in the budget book, and if I don't, I do have a copy if anyone wants to review. Because this is we have a 5-year reevaluation system that every 5 years, we have to take a really deep dive into the data, and there's a lot of extra analyzation that has to be done with the different classes to make sure that everything is actually where it should be. And so they do this every 5 years, because in the past, towns would let it go 20, 30 years, and their values would remain kind of stagnant. So we want to make sure, the Department of Revenue needs to make sure that every 5 years we are where we're supposed to be. And there's a lot that goes into it with the Department of Revenue. You have to submit a lot of documentation, you have to come up with a work plan, and so our consultant is going to be assisting with that, and so it is going to be an extra cost in his contract for this year only. And then it will go back to his regular contract price for next year. And so this has been, you know, I believe that Bill Krajewski, our consultant, has been doing our revals for forever. But this is my first year with a reval year. So this is, you know, this is kind of new to me too. So we're going to be working together to get that done. But it is a contractual increase that we really don't have control over. And the software and licensing went up a little bit too, and that is also just a contractual increase that they increased their prices. They haven't in a while, so I think the increase is just, like everything else right now in this world, is increasing, and they had to increase their price a little bit, so that's that. And that's it.
Does anyone have any questions? No, it's straightforward.
Yeah,
budget
it's a
for me.
pretty, yeah.
I'm just curious on one thing, the reval maintenance that is up substantially, and that's contractual, which is understandable. Is it a one-year contract? Is it a multi-year contract?
This is a one, he did a one-year.
Do we know that
nope,
now it's going to not do that again?
Yes, yes,
That
he-
will occur
Yes.
over
Yep.
some time?
Yep, it's a one, we usually do a 2 or a 3-year contract with him, but this year he did the 1 year just because it's a reval, and he kind of broke it down and explained how, he actually was gracious enough to move some of the money around in the original contract so that we could get it done a little bit less, you know, less cost for all of us. So he's, you know, he was good. And like I said, if anyone wants to see the 1-year contract, because he does break it down a little bit. But next year, we'll go back to our regular, you know, his regular maintenance stuff, and it will be the same as it was, unless he decides to increase his prices, but that I don't know. But so after this year, we'll be entering another 2-year contract with him.
Okay.
And he's very fair. He's you know, knows the town. He grew up here, so it's lovely to have. I appreciate having him as our consultant, because he's very familiar with the town, with the properties, and you know, it's good to have someone who knows and not out there just inspecting properties that he hasn't seen his whole life. So I hope he stays with us. I know he's getting close to, he talks about retirement a little bit, so that makes me nervous, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, I think.
I have a question. So, you connect with the building department, like,
Yes,
so when someone does a major
correct, yes.
remodel, addition and
Yep.
stuff?
That's how I get my, information. So when anybody pulls a permit, I enter all the permit information into my system, and that's how we know where we're going out to do our inspections. And once our inspector goes out, looks at the work that was done, he reports it back to me, and then I update the data into our system for that particular property, and that's how we pick up what we call new growth.
Right.
Or any additions, any new bathrooms, kitchens. So if something is done that's not permitted, we would never know, you know, so that's why we have this, that's why we're connected, and that's why we use, and I update the permitting software as well, as far as ownership goes. So if any transfer in ownership, I'll go right into Sam's system, update the ownership so that he's current on permits being pulled and that stuff too.
What do you do in the instance of, you know, someone pulls the permit, but then the inspector comes and they don't want to let them in? I'm assuming you have some sort of like average valuation you just apply?
If they don't let you in, which a permit situation, they generally will. It's very rare that someone won't let you in to check on a permit because they want their permit closed, right? They
Right,
don't wanna
I'm
see
just
each other.
curious, like, you
So
know,
we would
like,
use our best judgment to try to figure out, sometimes you never get in a house, sometimes you have to look from the outside and say, okay, I see an air condition up in that, what looks like an attic. So maybe they're using it as a living space if they're air conditioning their attic, and we had it as unfinished space. So we would add it as finished space, and then it would be up to the property owner to
come back
come
in.
to us and say, hey, we was storing food up there and we wanted it to be cool. So and then, we would require an inspection, and so that's how, but it's tough to, to police that, without bigger towns have inspectional services that are literally just out driving around looking for that type of thing. We're not fortunate enough to have that, so sometimes it's by chance that we'll find out something, and, we do the best to try to know exactly what is going on with properties. And sometimes it will be someone will call up looking for an extra barrel because they have an in-law apartment, and I'll look in my system and say, ooh, we don't have that in our system, so that happens frequently. Not frequently, but that does happen.
Does anyone have anything else? Nope.
No, only that was great to hear that you feel like you've started to get into a groove and that
Oh.
you've got the tax rate set and that it seems like there's been year over year
Yeah.
familiarity and process improvement. So
Yep.
we appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. I think we all do.
All right, great, thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you for coming in. Here, there's a vacation,
Have a good
enjoy.
night. Yes, tomorrow morning.
Yeah, not much stuff there.
All right, so we're just waiting for Chief Gillen to come in. Rebecca, while we wait, do you have any town administrator budget that you think we can quickly go through in a few minutes?
So I do know that there was an estimate that I put forward for the GIC, which is our group insurance commission, is how we get our health insurance. And typically what we've seen in the past is that we've received about a 6% increase over the last few years in that budgetary line item. I was actually at a meeting with the Pawtucket Regional School staff, and they're also a part of the GIC. And they had come across a presentation that was given to the superintendents. And as part of that, there was some increases that I had not anticipated or had not become aware of. So they're actually estimating an increase between 9 and 11%. They usually don't come out with their final figure until around the March timeframe. But again, the number that you're seeing that's reflective in the budget currently is a 6% increase over last fiscal year, taking into consideration the potential to have somebody go on our insurance. Some of our employees are not on our insurance, or where there's an addition of an employee. And that also takes into consideration the agreement that we have for other staff that we share with other communities, where we pay their health insurance as part of that agreement with the other municipalities. So the number that is being reflected should be increased to represent more of a 9% to 11% increase on the number that's currently there. So that's just something to be mindful of that I just became aware of from that information. And I did send a notice over to our representative working with our treasurer collector to see if they had any more estimates or any updates that they could share with us, so we could get kind of a more refined number to use, because that is one of our larger budgetary items. So that would be an update that I would like to share with the finance board.
Okay, great, thank you. Hi, Chief, how are you? I'm good. You can join us. Yeah.
Alex, I was here last year, yeah.
Who just got appointed?
He's not here today.
Okay.
Yes, last night there was an appointment.
How are you?
Never better, chief. How about yourself?
Very good, thank you.
How's the back?
Good, yeah, doing good, thank you.
Good, good.
How about you?
Can't complain.
All right, so I guess I'll open the floor to you in terms of going through the department and, you
Okay.
know, what,
So, no surprises, not asking for anything out of the ordinary this year. If you look at, out of respect to the process, I know money's tight, so I level funded almost every expense line item. There was one for an equipment for our support, our software support for our dispatch that went up a couple $1,000s. I knew that was coming, so I'm budgeting for it. And then just firearms, I did add 2%, which was only $82, but just because I'm concerned that things like ammo can go up, and I need that. So the other lines, it's going to be tight on a couple. I might have to work something out at the end of next year, but I feel pretty comfortable that that will be okay. To salaries, everything you see there is contractual. I didn't add or ask for anything above and beyond what was required per the contracts. And that's all I have as far as the actual reasons for the numbers that I presented.
okay. Can you just explain, and just so that we're all, like, remembering the role of the reserves police officers is phased out or phasing out? How is that?
Probably phasing out is a good word. I mean, that's still here. What happened with police reform, they've done away with part-time police academies, so they won't be making part-time police officers anymore. What we're doing here in Groveland, I was fortunate enough, I found a full-time Lawrence police officer who retired, who still wanted to work, and he's been a godsend. He works a couple midnights for us, so that's why we have somebody new the last couple years. Otherwise, I don't know where we're going to find part-time officers. They're going away. I have some that have been long-time members, and they're both full-time firefighters. What they did, the state, when they did the police reform, is to stay on as a police officer, you had to go to a bridge academy. It was 200 hours, and that would certify them as a full-time police officer. So my reserve officers that I had, they went through that bridge academy, so they're good, they're solid, they're trained full-time police officers, and they work part-time.
Yep.
So going forward, we just won't have any more part-timers. Long after I'm gone, we'll probably fizzle out unless, again, you find somebody that retires and maybe still wants to do the job. So that's been a hardship across the Commonwealth, especially, I know, in like seaside communities that just overload their departments with part-time officers to get through that busy season. I don't know exactly how they're doing it. I feel blessed that I got the support from the town. A couple years ago, we got 2 more full-timers, and that's what saved us. Because back years ago, we had like 13 part-time officers, and now I believe we have 4. And again, most of them aren't able to work much because they have full-time jobs. So it's been a problem. I did present in my package that I could use another full-time officer right away, just because of filling in the contractual obligations for the officers to have their time off. We are getting busier, so that's part of it. But again, recognizing the financial situation, I presented at least in my narrative, that I would like to ask for that next year. And that would give me, the coverage would work for a long time for Groveland. Again, we're getting busier where like, our 2 detectives have to multitask. They could be working on an affidavit or a big case, but they're also assigned to patrol, and they just have to leave and go deal with a crash or a domestic or whatever the situation is. That in the future, you'd almost see this department maybe have somebody dedicated that's their job, is to be a detective with a lot of the scams and the financial scams and everything else that's going on around us. But I feel we're okay for now, but it is going to be a problem in the future. So I'm not asking for anything, again, extra this year, except just to recognize the contractual obligations.
I know in your write-up, you mentioned the jail diversion program and how that has been helpful, and that's funded by a grant through Beth Israel. Do you see that,
Leahy?
Beth Leahy, do you see that grant continuing, or do you see that grant at some point in the future fizzling out as well, where that, in order to keep that service, you would need funding for that?
I would say it's going to maintain itself for a long time because we're actually so busy, the 5 communities that are sharing that one clinician, that in the very near future, we're asking for a second clinician because she can't keep up with the workload. And it's proven to be hugely successful. It's very well received, and Robin is the clinician. She's almost overwhelmed trying to do the 5 communities. And it's such a good concept. There are so many people in need of mental health first aid that the officers have always done a really good job, but it's almost too much for us, and we don't have that networking like the clinician does. And she's just doing follow-ups, and it's just a really, really good program. And it's not costing us anything right now, so I know that's probably a concern, like where it goes in the future. So I really can't say, except I'm feeling pretty confident that it's going to be okay for a while because now we're going for a second one. And even the clinician requires an officer to go for follow-ups, and the grant even covers to pay the officer to go if we need to have somebody come in and go with her for overtime. And the grant also covered the first aid mental health training for all the officers, and there's more training to come for that, and that's also covered by the grant. So that hasn't cost us anything, and we have the space, thanks to Rebecca and our cable company, let us take over the front office in the police station, so we have a space for the clinician, and it's a really good program.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to ask?
Yeah, first of all, so happy to see that the drug and alcohol awareness program is still going strong.
Yes, you helped me get that going.
Well, no, you helped me get that going.
And not to interrupt you, but if I could, it's actually going, it's extending itself because it's hitting more topics. So this is the first year that the class is being extended, and it's just well received. They like it in the school, and they want to keep it continued. So I've been talking with Rebecca about, and Ellen's involved in that too. I don't know if I can speak about that there might be some funding that we're looking at to pay for that, because that's something, that causes somewhat of a hardship on my budget, but I believe so strongly in that program, the DARE program, that it comes out of my overtime, or we're just short-staffed, that we just have to move people around as much as we can. And that's how we're getting by without that other officer I asked. Everybody's just kind of covering as much as they can right now, and they know that hopefully that will be short-lived. But no, the DARE program is going really well.
Yeah, the idea is it pays dividends on the other end, so we need less policing, right? So I would think that there's some funding out there somewhere that would be of assistance to a program like this that's a proactive, mission to keep it, the other possibilities from happening.
We do stuff like Josh Sandoni, Sergeant, is I keep him certified as a school resource officer, a certified officer. And he even runs like car washes to come up with money to help get the shirts and other things like that. So we're doing all we can to keep that program going. But again, unless something drastically happens with some of the things that could be coming, some votes coming up real soon, hopefully we can maintain that otherwise.
Can we do public fundraising for this particular line item?
What do you mean by public fundraising?
Well, I don't know, say the chief and I got together and put our heads together and said, geez, what if we raffled a cow? I'm just making stuff up, right? And it's, $5 per raffle, and we pulled together $10,000 from raffling a cow. Could we use that specifically for this program to help maintain it, so it's like outside his budget, but it's donations from the public, It kind of like when we fill a squad car, right?
So I think that it would be more so like a donation. So if somebody wanted to make a donation, I believe that they can make a donation for a specific cause, and we can take that money and utilize it to that expense. But in terms of actually performing a raffle and/or fundraising activity, it becomes something that requires a nonprofit or 501c or something that would allow you to coordinate those activities legally, and be able to solicit those funds in that fashion. I know that even just something simple like the latest volunteers who wanted to help with Pumpkin Fest, they wanted to put forward a raffle, and you cannot go forward with a raffle unless you get a permit, and you cannot get a permit unless you have a nonprofit or 501c or something of that nature in order to perform that, or a private organization to perform that activity. So if you're talking about somebody who, out of the goodness of the heart, wants to donate X amount of dollars to support the DARE program, knowing the value and what it provides, we can accept those funds through the donation fund, and then we can pay those funds accordingly to support those efforts. If you're talking about actually fundraising and soliciting funding, that gets a little bit more trickier in terms of how you're actually going about it, and to make sure that you're in compliance with the laws and municipal finance laws. We'd have to probably take a little bit closer look at what you would propose to put forward, but a raffle could not be one of them. I know that.
Okay, so if I were to put together a 501c3 called Dare for Kids, and legitimate 501c3 organization, I can basically accumulate as much funds as I want, and donate as much to anybody, and you can take them,
Yes,
and there's no issue.
no issue.
You got a brilliant idea? Okay. The congestion on the roads, have you noticed an increase? I know I have, and how have you been able to deal with it?
I have noticed an increase in probably one of our biggest complaints as far as traffic is speeders, so we address that as much as we can with saturated patrols, or I've got that speed sign, I put that out. I do believe in the education, the new approach, at least since I've taken over, is try to educate people, not so much just giving people tickets and making them angry. You know, we try to work with people more and educate them, maybe even go knock on a door if we know who the person is that people are complaining about. The best way that I've been dealing with it is just try to open that line of communication. I keep encouraging people, you gotta let us know, because the people in town are the ones that see the problems, they live it. It might be right outside their front door, so I encourage them to call us direct, and then we just pay as much attention to that we can, and that really's been helping. One of the biggest ones that concerned me was the Bagnell School area. I've got 3 emails in a week from mothers that were worried about their kids crossing the street. So I went out myself, even sat there, and they were right. You know, I appreciated the help and the suggestion to let's get out there and pay more attention, because people going through the school zone with talking on their cell phones, and you know, so that concerned me. So again, I myself even stopped a couple cars, and there was others. They're not stopping people in the crosswalk. And the sad thing, or the concerning thing, is they weren't doing it on purpose. I really believe them. They're like, where? What are you talking about? And there'll be the kid that was just on the side of the road with his feet in the roadway, and the other car stopped, but you went by, and people just aren't paying attention, so.
Distraction.
Yeah, so to answer your question, it's more like saturated patrols in that area, and it usually works because we don't get the same complaints over and over again. We might have to revisit it, or again, I just encourage people, help us. We need the help too, so if you have a concern, let us know, and we do get on it. We don't ignore it.
Yeah, I guess my concern is more with the pass-through traffic. It's not necessarily the residents of Groveland, but it's the people that use Groveland as a pass-through to get to one of the major arteries, 495 and 95.
Yeah.
And now with the new set of lights at Salem Street, everybody has these new apps, right? Like Waze. And what starts to happen is they start to divert the traffic from the main roads to these side streets. And they boogie down there like they're late for the lobotomy, right? And now, those roads are narrow, they're tight, they're not very well lit. That's more my concern than the main roads, because these people are gonna start taking these back roads according to their apps, to try and avoid the main traffic now with the new set of lights at Salem Street. And then we all know how it backs up at Georgetown Center and
Yeah.
then the school there and then the school after that. And
It's already happening because of like, you said the lights in Georgetown, Seven Star Road and
Pond
Byfield Road,
Street.
Pond Street, they're already a lot more saturated than they ever were. I mean, you could drive down there and not see a car lots of times. And now that is, and to make it up, because it's longer to go around, you have to go a little faster. So people are buzzing through those areas. And again, the officers are out there. When people complain, I try to let them know without making an excuse, because they don't want to hear excuses, they want results. There's lots of times there's one cruiser on the road in Groveland. That's how it is. It's just whether the other officer's tied up or off at court, or we're trying to do a lot of our mandated training in-house online, so they're in the station on the computer rather than send them off and pay them to go to training. We try to do some in-house, so it's just, but then sometimes you'll see, if I have an extra officer, I can put somebody out, you might see 2 or 3 cruisers out on the road. It's just rare. But
Yeah. Now, when you write a ticket for a traffic violation, speeding, red light, stop sign, whatever it is, where does the money go? Does the money come into the town?
Only
Eventually?
some offenses do, and there is a percentage, I believe, that comes back to the town on all citations.
So
Some's more than others, I think.
theoretically, with the increase in traffic, the big increase in violations, you could almost offset the cost of another full-time officer with the increased number of offenses, until people got the,
Yeah. Like I said, we're not writing as, back when I first started, Groveland had a safety car that was supported by the fines. But there was only 2 in the state, I believe. We don't have that anymore. But you're right, some of it could offset an officer if there were fines written.
Are there any grants to look at, like as far as public safety, that we could use to get some funding? I mean, we're a small town, but people really use this town as a way to get around to other places. And it's really impacting us as these other towns around us grow. You see cars from New Hampshire, I mean, there's more cars from New Hampshire passing through Groveland every day
Yeah.
than there are cars from Massachusetts lately.
I do see some grants myself, but lots of times they're more aimed at like cities with bigger problems, bigger crime going on. Not saying that we should be ignored, but that's just the way it is. But now and then they do have grants for officers. I haven't seen one lately.
We're trying to prevent crime. I
Yeah.
mean, we want to get there before it becomes a problem,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you
No, I
would
know.
think that that's where the funding would go in preventive maintenance as opposed to letting your car break down before you put money into it.
We participate in the Governor's Highway Safety, the initiatives, like Click It a Ticket and the crosswalk violations, and that's all grant money. So I say, when you see like a 3rd cruiser out there sometimes, and they're stopping vehicles, that's usually a grant patrol that's paid for.
Can we get grant money to put some of those neat little signs that other towns have right in the middle of the stinking
Yeah, we've had
crosswalk?
'em.
Big yellow, it says crosswalk, and get people to at least slow down and look, and maybe there's someone there.
They've all been taken out over the years, though, but we have had them here. They don't last as long as you think. I think
I'll bet.
the best thing we could get, I've been asking, is the digital signs that go on the telephone poles. You're seeing them pop up all around the communities, and I think that's one of the cheapest, easiest fixes to bring awareness to people speeding, because we all can, at times, just be going a little faster than you realize. And if all of a sudden you come upon a LED that's flashing, it makes you look down and say, is that real? Is that really me? And so I've been talking with Rebecca, and we're trying to find money for that, and that might be something with some grant money if we can find them. I got 2 about 15 years ago with grant money, and one of them's still alive today, the one coming down the hill.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
toward the
and the other one out
center
front here finally died, and it's just not worth fixing, so. And they've come a long way since I bought the first 2. But that was through initiatives through the Governor's Highway Safety, and I asked, and they won't honor them anymore.
Well, Rebecca is the queen of OPM, so I'm sure if it's
It's
out there,
it's
she'll
on our
find
list,
it.
right?
We had a very productive conversation with the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission about potential speeding issues along 113 and Main Street, and specifically with a lot of the added activities that have been going on in the Pines. And so we've been working to see whether or not we can get another speed sign and other traffic calming mechanisms in place that would be provided by Mass DOT, as that is a Mass DOT-owned roadway. So we are working to try and work with our partners and, state agencies and other regional planning organizations to see exactly what we can benefit from in terms of some additional either resources or even actual physical, tangible infrastructure that we can add to further support the chief's mission in trying to address this issue. And in response to the other grant that we were working on, it's the opioid settlement monies that we received. We're working to use those to supplement the DARE program and the efforts of the DARE program, considering the fact that there's recently, and speaking with Sergeant Sindoni and the work he's been doing, they have added a opioid type of and prescription drug type of component to their efforts, which is newer than what we've historically seen in the past. So we believe that would be a good use of those funds moving forward as they come in and as we look at ways to combat those types of situations that we have here in Groveland. So the chief has been looking at grants himself too. So I think between the both of us, we can try and find as much as we possibly can. But it's definitely an ongoing effort.
I got faith in you. And thinking out of the box, now that we have a bus route, is there any money that we can tap out of the Mystic Valley Rapid Transit Authority to help us out with this? I mean, you never know, right?
So their monies are more so for we recently tried to work with them and to get a shelter. So we have the bus stop now, and as we've been working with the police department, most of the time some people will go into the station if it's raining and things like that. So we're trying to provide those shelters so that they can stand there instead of, going in and, chatting with the dispatcher while they're actually trying to work and whatnot. And so they have access to add us as a partner to grants, but they don't specifically, as an organization or as an entity, provide grant funding. So they're definitely a partner and definitely allow us to get extra points on those applications, and we are working to continue those efforts.
Just trying to think outside the box.
You asked about what we're doing, and that's a good point. I forgot that we actually met and did all that that's still something in the works. I've been asking for 10 years to have them reduce the speed out here. I've actually taken them out in the cars and showed them the difference. And now with all that's going on at the Pines, that's a very popular spot. There's a lot of good things happening there. It's going to draw more people. And the police station, the traffic going in and out of here, new houses, the next doors, everything. This road is busier than ever. And you're allowed to go 25 all the way up to King Street, and then everybody speeds up. And it's also coming this way. And it's just dangerous. So, but they go by the medium speed on the traffic counters, and we're within it. And you have to watch out, because I've actually seen it happen when I asked them to do it on 7 Star Road. They actually increased the speed in some areas. So you have to be careful about
What you asked for.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I
You're welcome.
appreciate all your answers and your honesty in answering them.
Thanks for your interest.
I would just like to add that, year over year, I feel that your budget is, I don't want to use the word predictable, but, we see year over year, we see, you really trying to be creative, trying to be just, I feel, respectful of the taxpayers, respectful of the town as a whole, the competing priorities, the understanding that there's a lot of different, wants and needs and all of that. And, the level funding whenever you can, the creativity that, I've seen, we just really appreciate it. And everybody in your staff is just so friendly. We've had little, encounters, all friendly, supportive encounters with various staff members. And I feel just so fortunate to have such a Class A police department, and I really appreciate you and the department as a whole, so
Thank you. That means a lot. I appreciate that. I've been told that I sometimes act like it's my money, this budget. And somebody said you should act that way. So I'm pretty tough with the money at times, so I do try to stretch a dollar and, again, be respectful. It is the taxpayers' dollars, and
It is, and really, sometimes it seems like, well, it's only a couple $1,000s, what's the big deal? But what came to my mind, or what I heard come out of my own mouth a couple years ago, was every decision matters, and I think it's really true. Every single decision matters, because they're in comparison to other decisions, and sometimes, you know, one small decision is a precedent, and then it ripples and it impacts department to department, year over year, and small decisions really can matter. But I feel that your consistency and your respect for the process really speaks volumes of the department as a whole, so.
thank you. And when I do that, I do it out of respect, knowing it's the taxpayers' dollars, and I've been here a long time, and money's always tight in Groveland. It should be, right? It's the taxpayers' dollars. The day that we hit the windfall, though, I would like more money for like training and things, just so you know, but I know this isn't the time to ask. We are so tight on like overtime if the officers need to do something extra, or the training again, but we're making it work. You know, the officers are well-trained, they're all certified, and they're knowledgeable, and they're kind, and again, thank you for
Well, I made it
recognizing
clear that when I hit the lottery, there will be a large donation to the town, and I will keep that
Thank
in
you.
mind.
them. Yeah, our wish list.
All set.
Anything, Alex?
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you for seeing you
Thank
again.
you.
Sorry, I recognize you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
Good evening.
Chief to chief.
Yes.
Thank you for coming in tonight.
No problem. Happy to be here.
I can turn it over to you, and you can go through, the department.
Yeah. Department had some changes this past year. One of our full-time members got a chief's position in Newbury, which was excellent. He's a good guy. He's well-deserved. We're going to miss him in Groveland. We're in the middle of the process of replacing him right now. Hopefully that'll go smoothly. The bulk of my budget I've level funded, which some of it's very difficult to level fund because prices of vehicle equipment and maintenance and the annual inspections are all going up. Association dues went up. That's why I added a little bit. Trying to understand a couple of things with the Essex County Fire Chiefs that I've discussed with Rebecca, and she even says it sounds a little strange, so we're trying to remedy that. Fuel's difficult, that's tight, but most of my money is going to be salaries, and I'm sure you noticed at the top I moved some money around. My drill wages, every year we seem to have an excess. Actually, last year we transferred some money over to the town from drill wages because we had so much extra. So I moved that into a per diem vacation coverage, and I moved some of the call firefighters' wages that way also. Reason being is when the full-timers came on, we tried something, and Monday through Friday when the full-timers are on duty, we only do a single tone for just the on-duty personnel for medical calls. Fire alarm chirping every few minutes, or a fire alarm that's been going off for a couple of hours and then they get annoyed with it and we know it's nothing. We just send one engine instead of calling all the call firefighters in and paying them. We've got on-duty staff that are getting paid for it, so we were doing that. So what I'm going to do is the per diem, I'm going to do a 7-day a week. I'll cover weekends and holidays with that per diem pay. So 8 to 4, 7 days a week, we're doing the same thing. We'll do a single tone for just the on-duty personnel and see if we can keep it nice and remedied that way and change the staffing a little bit and take a little pressure off of our call firefighters. I explained when I got hired a few years ago that we were at that point of needing a couple of full-timers, and then once you hit 1,000 calls a year, you need to staff a little bit more, and we're crawling up on that. We would, at 900 calls this past year, in calendar year '23, and it's getting to that point where you can see the call firefighters are getting annoyed. Once you hit 1,000, you're doing 3 calls a day. You get a nice weekend, you plan it with your family, and you spend 5 or 6 hours at the fire station on each day. It tends to get, so we're trying to remedy that and keep things covered without having to spend a lot of money and add more full-timers. We're trying to hold that off as long as possible.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's kind of like my goals is I'm trying to keep everything financially sound, keep the station covered, and not get away from that call fire department that we get such an incredible, at such a low rate, you get such an incredible service right now.
No, I agree. Reading your, your documentation, the call times are, very reasonable for a call fire department, especially given,
Right.
the nighttime hours and everything like that.
We've also, this past July, I implemented teams where I can't make them hang around because then I have to pay them. They're called firefighters, so when they sign up for the department, they say that when they're available, we're going to come. We divided the teams up into an officer and a couple of firefighters to 1 week every 6 weeks, make an extra effort to be available. So if there is a medical call, it's the 3 or 4 of them instead of 10 to 12 of them. Because 3 or 4 of them can usually handle it. If it's something big, then they just more manpower to the station and they'll all come and help. But for the most part, it's been keeping everything financially sound.
The only thing I noticed, Rebecca, and maybe it's just, the ID was, we're showing like the career salaries as basically like 100% increase, but there were some,
We had a
Separate.
we had a SAFER grant
right,
for 3 years.
yep,
And then this fiscal year of '24, the SAFER grant ended December 31st, so it's a 6-month span for the career guys. Next year, you'll have the full 12 months. That's why you see such a big jump.
yeah.
I
and-
can speak, I think, to what you're looking at, Melissa.
Yeah, the line item.
See how it says, the bottom of, the last item listed on the salaries is firefighter wages. That's the 66,000, that's one of them. That was just a line item that got added, that's why the account ID says unknown two. And then if you go up, it's been replaced with an official career salaries expense, and that includes both of them. The second line down says 133,000, so really the 133 is the difference between the 66,000 up to the 133. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So we just replaced a sort of a temporary added line with the official accounting line.
I was just pointing it out in case anyone references the book themselves, like, they're gonna see 100% increase, but then further down, see 100% decrease, but really,
Yes.
it's the two of them.
It's
netted
those two lines together.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything for me?
It looks all good to me.
Looks good to me, too.
We're trying.
I think this is
That's-
exactly what we were talking about 2 years ago and 1 year ago,
Correct.
trying to get to the point that we have the career firefighters, and how can that absorb some of the
Correct.
costs on the other
Yep.
side? So I feel that it's
And it worked.
now coming together.
So far, it's worked.
And that that those added line items will improve the process
Correct.
for everybody and help pay for the
Correct.
costs. absorb the
And
costs.
not lose that call fire department.
That's right.
Department, because that is huge. I don't want to see the town get away from that. Because that gets, I find that the call firefighters there for the right reasons. They're true professionals and they want to be there. They want to be part of the community and part of the fire service. Some of the bigger cities, you don't always get that. They come in as a career, they like the shift, and then at the end of 25 years, they take their pension. And it's just for more of the pension, where these guys aren't gonna get a huge pension. They just wanna be part of the fire service.
Yep. That's good.
Looks good.
Okay. I think we're good. Thank you very much.
All right?
Say, can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
First, I want to say that I think you've done an excellent job since we brought you on board.
Thank you.
Hopefully you continue it. How are your staffing needs? Are you fully staffed, do you feel now, or do you, I know early on there were some shortages, some
There are
spot
goals in the
coverage
future.
times.
There are goals in the future. I know once we start getting the call volume over 1,000 calls per year, we're gonna need to cover more with career guys. But I think that's, I'm hoping that's like 4 years down the road. Right now with the two and running the per diem shifts on the weekends, I think that's gonna work out well.
Okay,
Because
so,
it keeps the call firefighters involved, because now they got per diem shifts to do on the weekend, and they're more involved. And those that have plans with their family don't have to worry about that medical call. They still worry about the fire call, but they'll hear the medical call and they'll say, okay, we got on-duty personnel handling it. So it'll keep everybody in play.
okay, so what I'm hearing is, because I'm always a future-looking guy, you're at 900 calls right now.
Correct.
As of calendar year 2023.
Calendar year 23.
So you're on the bubble. You're getting
Yes.
close. And you also have an increasingly aging population.
Yes, we do.
So,
I turned 60 next in 2 months, so yes, we have an increasingly aging.
happy birthday.
Thank you.
So I guess what I'm getting at is, we should start planning now for that increase that you see coming
And that's
very
what I'm,
shortly.
that's what I'm doing with that per diem line item. I build that up, and then hopefully 4 years down the road, that's built up, covering a lot of time. Then if we do have to do a career firefighter, that money's there, and we just transfer it line item to line item, instead of hitting the taxpayers with something big.
You're as the age as I am. Your 4 years will go by in the blink of an eye.
Oh, I agree.
And if we don't plan now, we're gonna be caught
Correct. And that's
later.
what I'm trying to plan now with that per diem line item, is coverage in the future.
Excellent. Now, the next question is, I know when we hired you, you inherited a lot of, how should I be kind, antiques, as far as equipment goes.
Oh, we are in great shape now. The ARPA funding helped us replace a 1991 pumper, so we have two fairly new pumpers. The ladder truck's only a few years old. The only vehicle that was starting to show its age was the command vehicle, and that just got replaced. So the next person to ask for a new vehicle will probably be the next chief, because in 5 years, they're gonna drag me out of the office kicking and screaming, because I don't want to leave, but I'll be aged out.
Well, maybe the laws will change by then.
Maybe.
70's the new 50 now.
Yes.
You know how it works.
It is.
And on a personal note, ever since I moved here, I really, and my kids and my grandkids have always looked forward to that special night in December when Santa Claus
We are
does
gonna
the
expand
first
that.
responders.
We are going to expand that next year.
And I can't tell you how many residents have come to me so disappointed over the last couple of
I've-
years that they didn't see
I've
Santa.
received a few phone calls also. We
And-
tried something different for a couple of years. We're going to expand it next year to where the truck goes out down every street with Santa for a couple hours, and then comes back to the fire station and hangs around at the fire station for a couple hours, so the kids can follow him and hang out with him for a couple hours.
Yeah, I mean, I know to a lot of us, maybe it's a little thing, but
Oh, no, it's a big
sometimes
thing.
those little things can make the town what it is.
Agreed.
And, you know, it's, I guess it's just a special thing to me and my family and some of the people I
Yeah.
talk to. I'm hoping that we can,
I know since I moved
it
here,
back.
Pumpkin Fest has been huge. My granddaughter loves it. She, even living in Westminster, they travel out the hour just to come to Pumpkin Fest. They come out and see Santa from Westminster, and so, yes, I agree. That community event is huge.
yeah, it really pulls the community together. You know, everybody's out in the street.
This past year, the light department did a huge job on the square, I thought, with decorating.
Beautiful, wasn't it?
Yeah, every year that's gotten better, yes.
It was
It-
I really
magical.
liked it. I wish we had more of the
It
blue
was
ones.
really, really nice coming in every morning and seeing that,
No, it was wicked cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see the community starting to come together more and more with that.
Yeah, maybe next year we can have a tree lighting ceremony like they do in other towns,
Absolutely.
right here in the common. And
Yep.
you know,
That'd be huge.
another kind of community event,
Yep.
putting people together. Other than that, I
Okay.
really thank you for all your hard work, and I want to thank your department and all the staff you have
Yes.
doing the
I thank them on a
spectacular work.
regular basis, believe me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Y'all have
you.
a great night.
Take care.
Okay, so if we move to the next item on the agenda, it's just an update on the Whittier Tech Building project. I know there was a public comment last night at the Board of Selectmen meeting, both people, you know, talking about it. Rebecca, I know there were some questions about, you know, what does a yes vote mean? What does a no vote mean? And I know they've gotten back to you about the details of like what would happen next if a no vote came in, correct?
So at the Board of Selectmen meeting last evening, I had made sure that it was known that the magnitude of people that have come into my office have expressed some concern as to what's happening and not really understanding what it is that they're voting on and what are the, you know, what is the process. So, you know, they say online and on different conversations that if you don't vote this way, then you get this. And so there's been a lot of confusion as to, well, I have no choice. I have to do this, or they're going to charge me more money, or, you know, what does that mean? And so I had inquired as to what project they would move forward and inquired to the process, and they got back to me that they didn't give me much information. So I just kind of expressed that again at the meeting last evening, and one of the school committee representatives for Whittier, who is actually our representative, had said, you know, why don't you reach out to them again? They're very responsive. So I reached out to them last night after the meeting and asked the question again, and they did get back to me on some of those questions that I had posed. And specifically, it was, you know, if the vote on January 23rd does not pass, the Whittier School District has stated that they will move forward with capital plans. And they have multiple upgrades that they need to put forward because of the fact that they need to bring the building into compliance, and they have some other thresholds that it triggers, such as ADA compliancy and things of that nature. That is correct. We've all seen the pictures of the building, the presentation, and we've heard from many people to express that the building is in bad need of repair. But the process to which those repairs go forward with has not really been forthright in terms of the conversation. So the question I had to them was so that I could relay it to individuals who asked me, what is that process? And the process is the same as that we're going through now. The town still have an opportunity to vote on the capital projects that are being put forward. There are 3 ways in which they can go about putting a capital project before each of the communities if in fact the school does not pass. So if they need to move forward with the capital upgrades, and they do, they will be moving forward with an option to put it before the voters. So there was the 3 options. So the Whittier School Regional Agreement does not specify how they incur debt. So it resorts back to the statute, and the statute gives us the process that we're going through now. You can either go for a district-wide vote and get the majority vote to move forward, or you could do it contingent upon a 2.5 override and go to each individual community. Or there's another CMR that allows them to include the capital assessment in their operating assessment, which is something that we get annually to provide for the students that attend the school district. And so if they go forward, they will be putting it forward as an assessment. That assessment will obviously be larger than what the town can afford, even if it's only taking into consideration 2 of the many capital upgrades that the school is in dire need of. But it's still going to be more than we can handle in our budget. So we would put that on an override, as I would imagine some of the other 11-member communities would need to do. And they would need 2/3 vote of the 11-member communities to pass that in order for them to get approval. And if they do not, then they do not get the funding. And that unfortunately would be catastrophic for their operation, because it allows them only to operate on a 1/12 budget, and that is not a situation that anyone wants to find themselves in. So again, it doesn't offer any insight into any great news, but it does give more of a understanding as to the fact that the voters still have to vote. They still have an opportunity to vote for the projects that are being put before them. So on the 23rd, you are voting on the school. If that passes, we will then need to go for a debt exclusion, and we will then need to fund that project. And if the debt exclusion does not pass, then we will need to find the funds through our operating budget. If the vote on the 23rd does not happen, the Whittier School District has those,
If the vote happens, but if it doesn't pass.
if it doesn't pass, excuse me, if it doesn't pass, then like I said, they have those three options to put it forward to the voters as how they would move forward, because of the fact that we would not be able to fund the capital improvements. We would need an override, and they would need 2/3 vote for that to pass, for them to use that funding for their projects as proposed. So there will be a multitude of votes no matter what happens. And I think that was the big thing for me, was clarifying that for individuals who came into my office and said, well, what am I voting on? And what does this mean if this happens? And so I was just trying to understand exactly what that process was so that I could relay that to the individuals who asked. What does a yes vote mean? What does a no vote mean? What does the next step? What is the next step? And there are a multitude of steps depending on what decision is made at what course. It's almost like one of those charts that you have. If you say this, you go this way. If you go that way, you go that way. So it was just kind of trying to figure out what that looks like and making sure that people were aware that it's a little bit more complex than if you vote this, you get this.
When you say they've said that they're going to assess, they haven't indicated whether through the operating assessment or the capital assessment, correct? Or is it default through the capital?
So they've accrued, so historically, they've given us their annual assessment has included their capital historically. So it is definitely something, as we said, which would be catastrophic to the operation of the school, because it would eliminate their funding source. So it's not for the regional, so you're more so thinking of the Pentucket Regional School District. So one of the reasons that I mentioned the regional school agreement for Whittier is because in the Pentucket Regional School Agreement, we talk about how you can incur debt and how you need the majority in order to move forward. In the Whittier School Agreement that was done in 1967, it does not specify how that is done, and therefore it defaults to the statute, from my understanding and from what I'm being told by counsel and from just looking into the statute myself. And therefore, they had those mechanisms in order to figure out how they would move forward with the capital. And that is the assessment, or one of them is the assessment.
That seems to be okay with the old school, but this is a totally new school. That agreement is null and void in my mind, the existing, because it's a 1970 agreement. It went with that school and the cost of building that school. Now, they want to do a new build-out, okay? It should go through an agreement process again, because it's not valid.
I haven't heard any conversations about whether or not they'll if they move forward with the new school, they'll have a new agreement.
To me, the agreement went with that school. I don't know what it cost to build it, but certainly wasn't $500 million. So it would seem to me logically, okay, that agreement is not valid for the new school. That's just me talking. Now, lawyers would need to get involved in that. But to me, it's a whole new build-out. It's very different than the current school in the way it's been financed. Now we're into some ambiguity on how we're going to pay for it, finance it, or whatever. So I think, it should be looked at, but it's not going to be done in a week.
So they're not using the regional agreement to move forward with the school in that regard, because the regional agreement doesn't talk about how they incur debt. They talk about the percentage based upon the eligible students, but they don't talk about how they go about the legal process as to how they get the vote. The legal process is how they get the vote is set by mass statute. It's not in the regional agreement. The regional agreement only specifies that we are responsible for the school-eligible children, and that is our percentage as a member community. It does not specify how they get that debt approved. That is statute.
Well, to my point, so the one we have now lacks a lot of detail. So it's, in my mind, it's an invalid agreement.
I think you're going to see, based on the circumstances, that, just like we have conversations about updating the Pentucket agreement, like, there'll be conversations about updating the Whittier agreement. That's just my personal opinion on that, that people are going to say, like, these allocations of, I only have, 35 kids, but I'm covering a
Yeah.
greater percentage than those kids. I think you'll see conversation about that for future. Nothing we can do about point in time, but
Well, good luck at town meeting on that one.
I think it'll be hard to change the agreement after the election because
Yeah.
everybody just voted based on information at hand.
But to Jim's point, and I kind of agree with him, this agreement was signed in 1967, is that correct? How can anything commit anyone or anything into perpetuity? I mean, they can't lock us in. There has to be an opt-out. And, at the end of the day, we have 35 to 45 students in the entire town that actually attend that school. And there's no guarantee that anyone in the future will be accepted at that school. That's what really gets stuck in my craw, that we could get a bill and they could say, sorry guys, not a single student in your town made the cut. But here's the bill.
I'd be shocked if they did that.
I would be shocked too, but you know what? Nothing would shock me nowadays. I know we're also a member of Essex Aggie, another vocational school, so we kind of support too. What is the main difference between the two that we couldn't get from one school that we have to get two?
So Essex Tech is classified as another category. I believe it's Chapter 74, and therefore, any program that is not offered at Pentucket or Whittier, which is mainly, I believe, agricultural and veterinarian-type programming, is offered at Essex Tech, and we can have students go to Essex Tech for those programs specifically, and we are only paying for the enrollment of the student. We are not paying for anything more, and it's only those students that would attend for those programs. So with Whittier, it's a little different because they're the main vocational school that we have. So they would go for all of their vocational needs at Whittier, but Whittier does not offer veterinarian services, and they don't offer agricultural programs, and therefore the only way for students to get those programs would be to go to Essex Tech. So we pay for the Pentucket Regional School, we pay for the Whittier Regional School, and we also pay for the students who go to the Essex Tech. So right now we have 35 students in Whittier, and we have 11 students at Essex Tech.
So what you're saying in essence is, if Whittier wasn't an option to the students in Groveland, Essex would offer everything that Whittier does today. Am I correct?
So then it would go
But the only reason they have to take Whittier as their first choice is because they offer the program at Whittier, because Whittier is an option. But if Whittier was taken off the table, theoretically, that was no longer an option, does Essex still offer everything that Whittier now does, plus veterinarian and agricultural?
I'm not sure if they offer the same programming, but the same concept would apply. But we would have to be a member community, and Essex Tech has their own member community, and we're not a member community for Essex Tech. We're only under that parameter, like I had mentioned, I believe it's called Chapter 74 programming, that would allow for those students to go there because we don't have that program elsewhere. So we would have to go through the legal process of withdrawing from Whittier, and also going through the process of seeing as to whether or not Essex Tech member communities would allow Groveland to be part of their member community to Essex Tech. So it's not a simple switch and swap. You'd have to go through a process.
But the process could be worth several million, tens of millions of dollars.
It could. Right now, like Jim has said, we're a little too late in the game, so we're on the hook for this no matter what. So even if we were to try and withdraw, which would require a unanimous vote of the 11 member communities to allow us to leave the agreement with Whittier, we would still be on the hook for the debt if the vote is a yes and incurred on January 23rd. So that's the only reason that I think that a lot of municipalities have struggled with this, is because the vote does prohibit, you have to pay it. There's no out. There's no, we can't pay it. You're voting to take on this project.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to confirm that there has been conversation, given that the age of a lot of contracts have terms on them, right? A very common thing. And given that this is from the 67 or whatever it was signed, long time ago, I just want to confirm that there has been discussion with the town's lawyers that, hey, this is such an old contract, we can at least pursue some sort of avenue to exit because of its age, because of the lack of term. Like, has those conversations been had?
Those conversations have been had, and it really is something like even our current regional agreement is not current, so to speak, but it stays in perpetuity until action is taken. So it's the same type of concept with the Whittier School Agreement, regardless of the fact that it's old. At the meeting last night, I mean, as much as I hate to say, because but it's true, they said, nobody has asked about it. Not one of the communities has come forward and said, why don't we update the regional agreement? Not one of the communities that says anything about the regional agreement until this situation has occurred. And like with the Penducket Regional School District, we're more in tune with that. And that's on us as a member community to be more mindful of the agreements that we have in place, not just when they backfire on us. And that's my personal opinion, but it is something that, we do have a due diligence there to make sure that we're keeping up to date with what we're involved in, not just, paying a bill and all of a sudden it's much more than we anticipated and, oh, this isn't fair. But there is other aspects of that type of process that do present a struggle in terms of what is fair and what the community is really struggling with.
Yeah, and just off the top of my mind, do you know, because I know it's based, the way we pay is based on like the amount of children we could potentially send, right? Does it take, and I know that in Whittier you have to apply, like, do you know what the percentage of folks that are turned away from Groveland is? How that might be factored into this hypothetical number of children we can send to Whittier?
Well, the hypothetical number is all the school-aged children. It's not a hypothetical. In terms of what the amount of students we had 11 students graduate last year, so our budget was significantly higher for the assessment for Whittier last fiscal year prior 2 fiscal years than it was the current fiscal year.
Yeah.
So, but that number, that 831 students are not just, people who could have gone. It's people that we count as students here in Groveland that are school-age eligible children. So, but to your question, I know that it was recently asked by one of the current Board of Selectmen as to how many students are turned away.
Yeah, because I would imagine that hopefully they would consider that in the calculation, but it sounds like it wasn't.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last question.
No, I was just saying that, I was hoping when pricing, who is responsible for what, within the population, they would take into consideration like the actual amount of children that would be accepted in the school, basically what percentage is going to be turned away, what percentage would we accept, and how that was factored. It sounds like it wasn't.
It
so.
doesn't factor into anything. So it doesn't factor into that number of eligible children. And from my understanding is they have a whole application process in terms of Whittier, in terms of like providing an application, your grades, all of that stuff. So they don't make a determination as to we're going to allow X amount of students from Groveland and X amount of students from Rowley. They're saying no, like we are looking at your resume, your application, and saying that you are, provide us with what we believe is what we embody here and want you to proceed in this program. So there is no, scientific measurement as to how many students from which community.
It's like a private school, essentially. We're funding a private school.
That's an argument that's been made, yes.
Absurd, sorry. But
What this is gonna cost, we could send every one of them to Harvard.
what's that?
We could send the 37 students to Harvard.
Or just send them to Brooks, might be cheaper.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you can't get blood out of stone. So, I don't know. Money doesn't grow on trees, and, you can't bankrupt the town. You can't turn the town into Flint, Michigan. It's not possible. I mean, Senator Tarr, are you out there listening? We need help.
I think the biggest thing that we've said is that it'd be much easier to know that the money is there. It'd be much easier to support the project and support what they're trying to put forward and understanding that they do need these improvements. It's been proven, it's been shown, we understand, we hear you, we value the programming, we value with Board First Development, but without saying, here, ask us for your vote, and also here, we're ensuring you that you will be able to pass a debt exclusion and it won't hurt your community.
Right.
Then it would be so much easier to say, yes, okay, let's do this, but without knowing that the money is there to support that, from a financial means, it makes it very challenging, and I think that's the biggest battle right now, is understanding that and not wanting to scare people and anything of that nature.
Right.
But I don't know if you, most of you are the chair, but you were at the
Yeah.
meeting, I don't know if you have anything else to share about the conversation.
No, I mean, obviously, like you said, the photos have proven the building is in need of help. And a lot of people last night were just, one phrase that I didn't care for so much was it's the cost of a pizza.
Yeah, that one's a beauty.
That, I get it, but, some people don't, have that, even the cost of a pizza. Everyone's financial situation is very different. So, and what I, as you said, what I struggle with is like, let's vote on whether we're going to put this new building in, but we have, no community knows how they're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing that I'm struggling with. And, I've tried to research and read through the MSBA regulations and, if the vote doesn't pass on Tuesday, Whittier has to go back and say, like, explain, like,
Go
this,
to the end of the
like,
line
what's
again.
the reason why this vote didn't pass, and, and I think that's what a lot of people are struggling with, is how do we pay for it when we don't know where the money's gonna come from?
It's because it's
It's
common
like putting the
sense.
cart
You don't
before
go
the
out and buy a
horse.
house without knowing how you're gonna pay for it. It's common sense. We all grew up that way. And this is so contrary and contradictory to the way our common sense works that it becomes challenging is a unique word. But it really is. It's, I don't know. I wish I knew where we'd get the money, if it passes.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, I value everything the school does, and I understand it needs the repairs and all that stuff, but what everyone's been saying is, like, how do you pay for it? It's kind of frightening, it's unknown, you don't want to burden your citizens, some citizens can't, the price of the pizza, like, some people are on a real tight budget, so it's like we have to watch out for them too, so.
And we went ahead with the middle high school. I mean, we knew
We had the-
exactly
we
what
had the
we could
funding.
afford, how much it was gonna cost, how we were gonna fund it. All the pieces were in play before the vote took place. So everybody knew exactly where they stood and what it was gonna run. This puts a lot of people in a difficult spot. To Alex's point, a lot of people are on fixed incomes. They don't have an extra pizza in their budget every month. Right now, they're deciding between heat and meds or food. It's gonna put a lot of people in a hard spot. And I feel for those people.
So I guess we'll know more about next steps on
Didn't mean to steal your thunder.
Wednesday of next week, when we know what the outcome of the vote is.
Right. I wasn't in attendance, but I watched the entire meeting last night, and there's valid arguments on both sides of the equation, and, as far as I feel my role sitting here in this seat, every conversation we've had, we've been talking about it for months, and the conversation just keeps coming to, it's really complicated. And I know some other finance committees have said we recommend a no vote. I personally don't feel comfortable with that because I think it's a little bit misleading unless you spend a lot of time really understanding the issues. A no vote doesn't mean the situation goes away and it's not going to cost you anything. The no vote means we're not going to approve a new building, but there's going to be something else that's going to happen that's going to be equally or perhaps more costly to the taxpayers. And I don't want to be misleading or directing our taxpayers to potentially make a decision that's going to cost them more money in the end. We don't know if it will, we don't know, and that's why it's just so complicated. But I just think the prudent thing is for everybody to read, listen, replay the meeting from last night that had lots of both sides of the equation, the Board of Selectmen meeting from January 16th, 2024 is what I'm referring to, and a whole lot of written information. Educate yourself, and I think residents really need to vote on the January 23rd between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. Really vote personally how they feel they personally can best manage the situation that's at hand. I don't think there's a unilateral recommendation, best answer. I think it's a very personal thing. And it's going to cost our town more money no matter what. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Welcome. Everyone good? Oh,
What else is there to say?
okay. So the next item on the agenda, approval of the minutes. Ruth distributed the minutes for the, what was it?
December 20th.
20th.
Yeah. I move that
Meeting.
we accept the minutes of December 20th. Do we have a second?
I'll second. All in favor? Is everyone at the meeting?
Yep.
Any discussion? Nope. Unanimous?
Unanimous.
Actually, hold
Hold on.
on. Jim was
Jim.
absent. Sorry.
Was I? Oh,
That's
yeah.
right.
Now my head's gone.
And
You're
Alex was
right, I
virtual.
wasn't there, sorry.
Do the
Oh,
Yeah,
roll.
we'll
yes,
do
and-
it again.
Right, I was virtual. If that was-
was
No, you were
virtual last
virtual at that one.
You were there. You missed the one before.
The one before. This is confusing.
You were here. Alex was
Alex was
remote.
virtual.
Yep.
Jim was absent. Ruth, Melissa, and Bill were here.
Okay, so
According to the minutes.
No, you're right,
I'll-
because
I'll make the motion to
I
accept.
wouldn't have been able to go to that anyway, so
I'll make the motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
here we go.
Okay, discussion has been had about who was in attendance and how in attendance.
That's what we have minutes for.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I can't.
You can't vote. So, 4 yes, 1 abstain. The next item on the agenda, town administrator updates, if you have anything else.
I just had one question as to, we had been moving forward with the restructuring of the highway department to some extent by just adding different people that would report to the highway superintendent, not necessarily creating a DPW because we need to go through proper parameters of creating a DPW, but just doing some, reporting aspects of 2 positions specifically right now. One of which is the building and facility supervisor and the public grounds and cemetery supervisor. So we just appointed, being the Board of Selectmen, the public grounds and cemetery supervisor last evening. So they're expected to start on Friday of this week. But Steve McPherson, who is our facilities and building and facility supervisor currently, is now reporting to Rennie, and he is doing more with the municipal building budget that you see before you. So I've been working with him a little bit more closely in, developing his mission and what he wants to put forward in capital planning and bringing a little bit more of that into his field. And because of such, I would just ask maybe if the finance board would allow Steve to come with me during one of the budget meetings to kind of present his proposal for the upcoming budget, such as some of the utility line items, supplies, and repairs. So I was just wondering if maybe I could work with the chair to get one of those slots that we have for some of the budgetary items under my jurisdiction and see if we could invite him in.
No, I'm perfectly fine with that. Does anyone object?
I'd love
More
it.
information, the better.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we can work together and figure out what day works best for him. You're welcome. Okay. The next item on the agenda is for the next meeting, which we already had tentatively set for January 31st at 5 o'clock. And then we would continue working through the department meetings based on the schedule that I had sent out, and which Rebecca has already communicated to those department heads. Everyone's good with that date? Okay. Then the next, good? All right. Then the next item on the agenda is just any other items not reasonably anticipated at the time of posting. I don't believe I have anything. Does anyone else? Nothing from Alex? Jim, do you have
Well
anything?
said.
Ruth?
Just to comment on how nice it is to have all the budgets on one little handy-dandy link. We don't have 1,000 emails going back and forth.
Yes.
I like the organization of it. Thank you.
And you saved the rainforest in the process.
And then I guess just to build off that, if anyone was watching or watches the replay, if they're interested, the link to the budget book is on the town website at the bottom of the finance board page, so everyone has access to it and can go through and take a look at the department's requests. Okay.
Motion to adjourn at 7:02.
Second?
Okay. All in,
Next on the agenda, so.
yeah, that's fine, go for it. All in favor?
All right,
Okay, unanimous. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
thank you. For your time.
Very good.